Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 3. The First Find. Several weeks had gone by since Izuku had started to work with Egon on the Singularity Soul. It was strange at first, to say the least. Izuku was wary of Egon for a long while when he started. He was strange, to say the least. The way he would jump at the most insignificant thing, changing his tone and mannerisms in a severe way, depending on the situation, and at the drop of a hat. The way he spoke, many times stuttering or just talking so low he looked like he was just mouthing words. Looking off into space with a glazed expression, his reasoning for doing certain things, overworking himself, over-carrying things to the point it was comical, and so much more. Then, one day, Izuku realized something. This is how other people perceived him all the time. With that revelation made, Izuku became much more at ease with him. Despite what seemed like madness of trying to juggle school and research, he eventually came into a rhythm. He'd get up, change, eat, say goodbye to his mum, and head out. After school, he'd head to Egon's home and go through the tub of papers to pick out what he needed for homework or answers to a test he'd have to copy down. After this, he'd go into his own designated office space and begin experimenting. After several hours of research and experimentation, he'd go home, eat, bathe, and go to sleep. Hey Izuku, whoa, you sure are focused. Anything yet? Egon asked as he walked into Izuku's office space. Coffee mug in hand, he saw Izuku looking through a microscope and skimming his computer before writing something down. Without looking, he answered, just looking over its structure and chemical compounds to cross-reference anything that matches up. How's that going? Egon prompted him, while looking over at his notes, which were just chicken scratch. Izuku sighed dejectedly and tells him, Not well. It doesn't match up with anything. At least, on Earth. I had a feeling it might be alien, Egon said with a chuckle while taking his drink. Then a stray thought crossed his mind. He turned around to ask, Where'd you find this anyway? Egon got a serious look on his face and put the mug down, two things that were never a good sign. Then he interlaced his finger while putting his thumb under his chin and a finger over his nose. Yet again, another bad sign, and Izuku knew he was in for a ridiculous story. Well, back at the laboratory, a small group was sent out on an investigative dig site from a crashed meteor, myself being amongst them. Anyhow, I unearthed the crystal in a completely different site, far away from the meteor crash site. They told me it was a really big crystal formation, but allowed me to take it back anyway, he explained while forcing a smile. Izuku looked at him, then at the crystal fragment he had under the microscope, then back at Egon where he asked, So how did you manage to get it here? I kinda stole it, Egon admitted while twiddling his fingertips. Izuku blinked, then his face fell as he replied, I don't know what I was expecting. I'll run some tests and get back to you on my findings. Then, one day, Izuku stormed into Egon's office, causing the man to spit his coffee and to knock over stacks of paperwork as he was typing on his computer. Running up to him in a frenzy, he began his absolute nonsense spree. Sir, Izuku yelled while barging in. What? Egon answers while trying to calm himself from the shock. Crystal. Yes. I did it! I did it! I did it! Okay, enough of the SpongeBob references. Just tell me what's happening, Egon told him firmly, while grabbing his shoulders. Okay, so I was running several splinters through several different tests, and I finally found something that the energy source inside is capable of, Izuku quickly and breathlessly explained. Egon, sitting back in his chair, straightened him and his coat out, sat with his legs crossed, and stated, Okay, start from the beginning and leave nothing out. Izuku nodded and explained. So, first I took several of the crystals and placed them into various jars submerged in several substrate, like blood, urine, sweat, saliva, tears, and he dropped off. And Egon prompted him. Semen, Izuku admits with a cough. Egon blinks at him before sighing and saying with a shake of his hand, Maybe I shouldn't have asked for the details, but go on. After a couple of days of soaking, I found out that almost no change had been made to them, so I decided to take them out and try out some other working theories. Except I forgot about the one that was still in the blood. When I finally realized and pulled it out, it had changed color from pale glowing white to crimson red. After cleaning it off, I felt some sort of strange connection with it, almost like it was a switch inside my head, and when I turned it on, the crystal began to leak blood. Told him, with excitement building in every word, making Egon grow more and more intrigued. So I decided to let it drain out into a jar, thinking it absorbed blood inside. But after a while, I found out that wasn't the case. Instead of just expelling all the blood, it continually kept making more and more. When I retrieved the crystal, I felt the same connection again and flipped the switch off, and the crystal stopped producing blood. Egon's eyes widened at this revelation, but didn't say anything till he was done. So I decided to do the same thing, but this time I put several into different jars filled with medicine, such as liquid aspirin, hydrogen peroxide, burn cream, and alcohol, among some other things. Anyhow, after leaving it inside it to soak for about 5 days, the same thing happened. It like the blood crystal. I was able to turn them on, and they produced all the substances in consistent amounts without signs of running out. Izuku exclaimed with his arms in the air, pure zeal taking over every word. Incredible! Egon jumped up from his chair with him before being struck with a thought and asked, Did you try to make a blood splinter absorb anything else? Izuku nods, then tells him, I did, but nothing happened. I also found the splinters are very flat. I also found the splinters are very fragile, and if broken, it stops producing the substance. Egon raised an eyebrow at this and stated, Fragile? I have a hard time trying to break these things when I make them, even with the energy inside them. I guess they become more brittle when they absorb something? Izuku guessed with a shrug. Did you find anything else? Egon asked. Izuku nods, taking out a clipboard and flipping a few pages. He tells him, Yes, I've tested a few with other states of matter. For solids, no results, no matter what I try. For gas, it works so long as there's no other air particles in the homemade vacuum chamber I made. As for plasma, the only thing I would think to do is try to directly conduct it as a power source, and now it generates its power signal. Egon blinks before exclaiming, You caught lightning in a bottle? Izuku looks off to the side while making an uncomfortable expression. while replying, "I guess, but I would like to try that one day. As of now, it's just enough to power a few appliances. Any more and it'll shatter," making Izuku shudder and be sent on the edge. All before he exploded into a smile, grabbing the boy, lifting him in a hug, while saying, "Amazing! I can't believe you discovered so much in a few weeks. It would take university students and professors months, if not years, to do what you've done, and make results out of it. You should be proud." Izuku couldn't help but smile back as pride and joy swelled in him. Once he was let down, he told the professor, "There is one other thing." Egon raised an eyebrow at this, letting him continue. "When I was in close proximity to one of the splinters without anything absorbed into it, I find myself far less tired than what I do when I'm not. So after putting it through a radiation detector, I found it gave a sort of harmless radiation," Izuku explained. Egon placing a fist into his palm and stating like a revelation, "I have been wondering why in the world you seem to be so full of energy all the time despite the work effort you put in. Having said that, I don't want you to abuse it. Who knows what could happen with long-term exposure?" Izuku nods in agreement as Egon backs away from his previous scolding mannerisms. On the offhand, with a bit of tweaking, we could go completely off the grid. On the other hand, he draws out while thinking off to the side and telling him, I think our money situation have, I think our money situation has just been solved." "How so?" Izuku questions. Egon, sitting back in his chair, thinks a bit more before coming to a consensus in his mind and telling the teen, "I'm going to use most of my resources to get medical drugs and other such things. Izuku, I want you to make splinters of each one. After that, we're going to go dumpster diving, getting into contact with as many hospitals and medical providers in Mustafu." Izuku nods rapidly and states, "I'll do my best." Chapter 4 Big Money. A couple of weeks later, the two scientists set out to do as they said. With Egon's connections, he was able to acquire medical-level drugs and other medication alongside many other types. Once they had it, Izuku set to work making sure that each would be copied into their own individual splinter. The whole process would take 5 days, so they set off on their other chores. Going down to a beach that was covered in junk, the two of them rent a pickup truck and spent the next 5 days taking plastic water cooler jugs back to Egon's house, washing them out, doing it over and over again. They even managed to find a huge fish aquarium that was in perfect condition. After having all these empty containers, they set to work on the most tedious part, filling each container with a different medicine. It was hard for them to figure out when they were filled, even when away, so they had a sensor that would go off to a wireless alarm when they weren't home or paying attention. They even took time to experiment with one of the splinters, making it fill over a dozen water cooler jugs and the fish tank. To their surprise, it did just that without stopping. While this was happening, Egon went around calling every hospital that would listen to come to a showing at a theater that he had rented out. A few weeks went by, and everything was finally set up. Egon stood behind the stage with a mic in his hand and nodded to Izuku, who was on the other side of the stage. They had practiced this situation for days on end. Now they were ready to sell their new miracle product. Hopefully they would bite. Egon walked out from the curtain, and the theater grew quiet as he addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, CEO and managers, thank you for all the time you have taken out of your busy schedules to come here today. He complimented them, getting a thank you round of applause in return. As he raised his hand, the clapping stopped. Once they were all quiet, he spoke. Now, I bet you're wondering why you should even give me 2 more seconds of your time. Well, I'm glad you think that, because I have a little something I'm sure you'll be wanting to clamber over each other to get. What is it that you ask? I'll show you. He then reaches into his lab coat and pulls out a splinter that was colored off-light. Behold, the splinter. No reactions from the crowd, just confusion. So he continues to tell them, this small crystal, made with my quirk and infused with a special energy source, is capable of recreating any liquid or gas-based substance after prolonged exposure. This one contains a mixture of lidocaine, bupivacaine, mepicaine, and nitrous oxide, or as most of you know it as, anesthetic gas in liquid form. At the sound of this, the whole crowd broke out in loud conversation amongst one another, and to the professor, who had to calm them down, telling them, people, please, no questions until after the showcase. I'm pretty sure I'm about to answer all your questions and concerns. First off, a demonstration. The splinter needs a mental command when in physical contact to activate it. Doing so will cause the splinter to leak out its content. To show what he meant, he took a glass beaker from his pocket, turning on the splinter, and placed it inside the moment it started to leak. He left it in his hand, holding it for the crowd to see as they all watched it, massive intrigued. After a few minutes, the beaker was completely submerged in the liquid. Egon then took the splinter and turned it off while placing the beaker on the ground and telling the crowd, as you can see, the splinter has filled this cup in a short time. A few mutterings went around, but Egon continued, saying, now, I'm sure you're all thinking that it'll run out, correct? Well, allow me to put your mind at ease. This particular splinter has been put through extensive tests. We have came to show what has been produced consistently over a period of 2 weeks. Egon clapped his hand, and Izuku started to bring out small pushcarts with water cooler jugs, same fluid as the cup on the floor. Izuku kept going back and forth, bringing out jug after jug until it took a few minutes to bring out the fish tank, filled to the top with the same fluid. At the sight of this, the crowd once again exploded into talking and excitement, some even offering money. Egon put a halt to the jabbering and explained, however, I must warn you that they are extremely fragile. Observe. With that, he dropped the splinter in his hand, and the crystal shattered on contact with the floor, breaking into so many that it looked like bits of crushed ice about to melt. This made the crowd to become dejected. Some were even skeptical. However, Egon once again put their minds at ease with another demonstration. And for those who are still unsure if what I just brought out was the real deal, perhaps a demonstration would work. He then clapped his hands, and Izuku brought out a hospital gurney with a man that looked like a pig laying on it, with his back supported up so that he could see and be seen. Next to him was a heart and brain monitor. This is Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang was kind enough to volunteer for this showcase. He introduced the man while taking out a syringe and explaining, I will now take the liquid from both tank and the cup I just filled to demonstrate, using no more than 10 cc from each. He then took a sample from each spot and injected it into the IV injector on his arm. After a minute or so, Mr. Wang's eyes started to flutter, and he passed out right in his seat. A slight murmur blanketed the auditorium. Egon motioned to the man and said, "As you can see from the monitor, Mr. Wang is completely under the effect of the anesthesia." But before any commotions around the price could be made, Egon exclaimed, "And that's not all. I have splinters of all different kinds of medicine and drugs." He waved his hand, and after taking away the asleep man, Izuku brought out a rack full of different splinters that held different medicinal drugs. This leaves the crowd in awe and excitement. Now, as far as pricing, I'm sure you can understand that such an item is bound to save any of you millions from having to order time and time again. So it will cost any of you around 20 years of what you would spend on that particular medicine or drug. But think of it this way, he quickly proclaimed before the crowd could get cold feet, locking their attention. "In the long term, you'll be making all that money back tenfold," he exclaimed, and that seemed to once again grab their interest. After seeing the crowd start to warm up and get hotter by the second, Egon put on his most friendly face and, in a sweet voice, asked, "So, what do you say?" Several hours later, Izuku had sat at a table back in Egon's office at his home, the two of them staring at a screen with Egon's bank info on it. The two of them had their mouths open in shock and awe at what they saw after the showing. Neither of them said a word for a long time, but eventually Egon was the one to state the obvious. 50 million? $50 million. We just made $50 million in one sitting from a couple of splinters and all those tubs of medicine, he exclaimed in zeal while jumping around in his chair. "Well, people are offering more and more. It turned into an auction," Izuku stated, trying not to act like his mentor. "This is amazing. I've never seen so many zeros in my account," he exclaimed while picking up Izuku and spinning him around, before stopping and asking him, "Do you know what this means?" "No more money trouble?" Izuku answers. "No. Well, yes, but it's not the only thing. We could use this money to start our research facility. If we offer these to other hospitals in the other provinces in Japan, we could make more," Egon told him. "I'm glad to hear that, 'cause I've been doing a little cyber searching and found this," Izuku said to him while bringing up a new page on the computer and showing a nearly run-down research facility. "It's pretty beat up and in need of a lot of rework, but I'm pretty sure it's cheaper than trying to build or even buy one already made. We might need to budget it for a while, but it's more doable. Also, I found a good construction company to help in the first bit. Uraka Construction Co., Izuku explained with a nervous smile, unsure of how Egon would react. "You have been a busy little worker bee," Egon praised while rubbing his head. "Of course, then comes the expenses of trying to get new equipment, paying bills, and employees. We need to find a more sustainable way to make money, at least until we can get our feet off the ground." "Oh, I have a few ideas for that," Izuku excitedly proclaimed. Egon smiled at this before his face turned into one of foresight and asked, "By the way, kid, have you told your parents about what you've been doing? I can't believe I haven't thought to ask this before, but from an outside perspective, you spend so much time with me. It seems strange, to put it lightly." Izuku's expression shifted and he admitted, while avoiding eye contact, "No, I haven't told my mum." Egon shucked air between his teeth and told him, "That's bad. Now that you mention it, there is a strange rumor going around about me saying that I'm going on dates with older rich guys," Izuku admitted while putting a thoughtful expression on his face. Ew, I don't even like to date people my age. Forget someone younger. Egon shivered with disgust while saying, "We need to fix that." Yeah, Izuku admitted, already feeling the weight of responsibility hit him. How in the world would he be able to easily explain all this to his mother? And how would she react, or would she even accept it? Only time would tell, and the meetup date. Hello guys, thank you for listening to this podfic. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Sorry if my editing is a bit loud or wonky, still getting used to it. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, enjoy your day. Bye.